call the meeting to order and we'll go ahead and get started. So the first item, thank you all for being here. I know it's a beautiful day outside, so thanks for giving up a little bit of your time to join us. We will start with a review and approval of minutes. I know we had updated minutes and then also the minutes from last meeting. So Councilman Dayhoff.
Madam Chair, do we need to approve the corrected minutes? I believe that we corrected them at the time. I believe we just need to correct the March 9th. I believe we just need to approve the March 9th minutes.
I think so, yes. I think we approved.
Hope everybody's had a chance to read the March 9th minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion, we accept the minutes as written.
Motion by member Wagman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by member Burrows. All those in favor say aye.
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 In the opinion of Councilman Dayhoff, the ayes have it. Thank you very much. It's great to see everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Dayhoff. So it's so funny. It's almost like we have a little special committee here on this Belle Grove project, which is exciting. I know that Josh was not able to join us. So Aaron and Kevin, if you all have any updates kind of on where things stand with that and how we can continue to be or thoughtful about being involved with that, that'd be great.
Sure. Kevin, you mind if I speak to this? Okay. So we actually had the HDC meeting for this month was canceled. So there was nothing on the agenda, so that we did not actually meet. But the last we had left it as a within the HDC was to use May, which the month of May, which is Historic Preservation Month, to rededicate the monument. I don't know if a location has been decided. I don't know if any additional gardens have been decided, any of that. But that was where we had left it within the Historic District Commission. Internally here, I think what we were leaning towards was making it an all-encompassing event to rededicate Belle Grove Square sometime in September timeframe, I think it was. So that is where we are presently. I think we were basically just going to do two separate events, one more focused on history, the other one more focused on the park. Kevin, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you said it all correct.
Great. So it sounds like that means that we will, I guess, hear more about a potential something in May that we could be a part of more in our presence and sharing that information than anything else. And then from there, looking ahead to September, I think it might be good too to see how the May event unfolds and what that looks like and how we can then, what we can do kind of in conjunction with that and to build on that momentum here on in September. And when is your next meeting?
Next meeting would be scheduled for May 5th.
Okay.
Unless something changes.
Okay, great. Well, then we will wait to see if you all have any other updates between now and our next meeting, or perhaps just at our next meeting, have an opportunity to hear about what those plans look like and how they're progressing. I know I'd love to join in and see what that looks like. And
yeah. I think what we ought to do internally to this advisory board is start planning. Maybe next month's agenda can include some planning events for our September event, independent of any HDC input. And that way we can collaborate as that evolves. We can, myself, Kevin, Josh, Chairwoman McMasters, we can all input to the Rec and Park agenda as opposed to waiting on them. So I think that's probably a better way for us to take the initiative on that.
perfect. We'll definitely include that for next month then. And I like the idea of going ahead and setting some times to start planning that event so that we can be ahead of it. Is that all that we have for that update? Are we,
Yes, that is everything I have. I'll turn it back over to you, Madam Chair.
perfect, thank you. Steve, did you have something? No, okay. I just saw you tapping on the screen, so I wasn't sure if that was an effort to jump in. With that, I know Abby has a lot of updates and some fun things happening. So I definitely wanted to make sure she had plenty of time. I know last month we kind of had to rush through some of her updates to keep with the time a little bit. So definitely want to give her plenty of time to go ahead and give us all the information and open up some opportunities for discussion with some of these awesome updates. So Abby, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. We'll see if the technology works out for us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't have anything too incredible to share, but Jessica, I did import your photos. So if everybody can see the shot of the pickleball court, is that showing on your screens right now?
It is.
Okay, excellent. So thanks to your recommendation to City Council and their positive endorsement, our pickleball courts were lined, I think, I don't have the date written down and I'm ashamed to say that, but I think it was at the end of March. And Jessica, perhaps when you showed up to photograph them, they were locked because we were allowing the lines to dry.
Yes.
Of course, as I think transparent as our meeting was and our discussions about the additional lines, as soon as the courts ended up locked, it was coincidentally a beautiful spring day, and we received a lot of calls from the tennis community as to why the courts were locked. And then that created immediate concern because they felt as though they were going to be pushed out. So I took this opportunity to introduce the stakeholders from both groups. So the pickleball folks you are familiar with because they presented at our last meeting. And so through email, I introduced one of the key tennis players at the park that has a connection to the tennis community. And I also introduced Larry and John to the tennis community. So my goal was to allow both groups to begin to work out schedules before they became conflicts. My main goal, and I will put this out to the board for discussion, is to allow them to work it out amongst themselves. My preference would be to not get involved with reserving and scheduling facilities. And as I explained to them, the reason I don't want to get into that realm is because then we have to start charging fees. As soon as it's reservable space in our system, if we're going to be equitable to the way we reserve other facilities, there needs to be a fee attached. And I don't think anybody wants that. So I am encouraging continued dialogue between the groups so that they can work out their schedules. I do know that pickleball will be playing there Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from 10 a.m. to 12 noon. Sundays from 5:30 to 8:30, and Thursdays from 6 to 9. There has also been a request to add Tuesday evenings. I will tell you that evenings are probably the most popular times for our tennis players to be on the courts. So we certainly would want to consider honoring another sort of reserved facility time on a Tuesday night, or giving them the green light to do that instead of just saying, we're out of it, you work it out. One of the other items that was discussed from the pickleball players to me to alleviate some of the potential conflicts was to, if you see the picture that's up there right now, the court on the left actually has 2 pickleball courts lined on it. It's kind of hard to see from this depiction. But anyway, they had suggested lining the initial set of courts in this manner. So they would actually then end up with 3 pickleball courts on each set of tennis courts. I haven't really given this a lot of thought because I really want the dust to settle first. And it's not as easy as just putting new lines down. We would have to cover up the existing yellow lines that encumber both full courts on the side that's closest to Winters Street. So lots of things to consider, but certainly we have maximized our facility usage, which is good to see. And that's always the goal. From the Recreation and Parks perspective, is that the facilities that we have out there for the public to use are highly utilized and sought after. And we certainly have created that environment here in City Park on our tennis courts. So I will stop sharing those photographs, and I will, I guess, turn it over to you, Madam Chair, to facilitate any discussion on some of that information that I just shared with all of you to see where your thoughts are.
Great, thank you, Abby. So it sounds like we have now a total of 5 pickleball courts across 4 tennis courts. The new lines are definitely a different color than the previously lined courts. So if you all have a chance to go out there, you'll see that. I know they talked about that in our last meeting in the presentation about the color of the lines, and it was really interesting to see, kind of as they described the difference in, how that affected the tennis lines, we'll say. But I think this is a great opportunity for us to talk a little bit, as Abby mentioned, about the idea of scheduling and how maybe even this group can be involved in, we'll say, mediating or maybe facilitating those discussions with those 2 communities to help make that a really positive thing for the city. But would love to hear anybody if you have thoughts. Looks like Kevin might. No, you're good. Okay. But if anybody has any thoughts on that, I think this would be a great time for us to kind of talk through what might be possible there.
What about like King Park? They have 2 courts, I think. What if we would later line them and offer the pickleball like the evenings over there? So I don't think the tennis courts at King Park are used as much, and then maybe we could always have the park set, regular City Park open for tennis.
So Kevin, if I recall correctly, the reason why we did it at City Park was twofold. The first was there's only a single tennis court at King Park, so maximum it would give them 2 pickleball courts. And the second was they didn't want to be spread across multiple facilities. They had some. I don't want to speculate on the number if I don't remember correctly, but they had quite a few people that were lining up to play pickleball, but they only had 2 courts to play. So they wanted at least 4 courts. 5 would have been preferable, which is what they have now. But if we had done it at King Park, then it would have been, this group of people meeting in one location and another group of people meeting in another. And if they ever want to switch teams or move their internal roster around, it would just create a logistical nightmare. So we tried our best to facilitate that. But I do agree that King Park is not utilized enough, and it might be an idea for people who are just trying to get into pickleball to reline that court as well.
Well, I was only thinking we could then offer them for the evenings, not during the day,
Yeah.
9 to 12, but having a Tuesday evening they could schedule being at King Park, but only knowing now they have 1 court is better than nothing.
I also believe from what I've heard that lights are a sought after amenity for both groups, for our tennis players and the pickleball players.
That may not work that well at King Park.
Well, I know they also had some concern with the ability to add, I think it was a second lining over at King Park, just because there wasn't quite enough space. I think they were concerned with that.
I
So
do
it would
remember that
just
as well,
be-
yes.
It would just be the one if there was something over there. But even if it wasn't something that could, help the larger pickleball group per se, it might be something, maybe not in the immediate future, but down the road to look at. As mentioned, for those who are just starting in pickleball, who get really excited, or maybe somebody from that group who wants to go out and practice on their own, and maybe it's not a group meeting, but maybe a few people who want to go out there, just to give that facility some more opportunity to be used. So that's, there's definitely some potential there, I think, for something down the road to look at what might be there. I was trying to jot down, Abby, as you said, the schedule, kind of all these days and times for pickleball, Monday through Friday, 10 to 12. I think you said Sunday, 5:30 to 8:30.
Yes, and then Thursday from 6 to 9,
Okay.
with a tentative request at this point to add a Tuesday group from 6 to 9. So.
And so was that a schedule that was worked out as the two groups talked, or was that just what pickleball proposed for their schedule?
I actually can't answer that question. So I wasn't aware of the final schedule when I connected the two groups. So I did get probably more specific information once the groups connected. But it all unfolded so quickly. The recommendation came from the board, it went to the council, it was approved by the council. And then we weren't sure when the courts were going to get lined, and our streets department is amazing. And the pickleball folks were able to turn out and provide the layout, and then the lines were down, and it was just really, it kind of just unfolded so quickly. And the weather was also cooperating. And I knew that I had to get both groups talking with one another, just because I didn't want to be reactive. I was trying to be proactive. So that's why I linked up both groups.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible how quickly those emails were coming, and all of a sudden it was like on the 25th, I think they said, we can be there tomorrow at 3, and then they were there.
Right. So yeah.
Which is great. I'm glad it happened early enough that, even the closures weren't, right in the middle of the wonderful weather, but there were some beautiful days there. Steve, you had a comment?
2 questions. Is the schedule something that is done online, and is it seeable by the community on the Park and Recs website?
So our facilities reservation system is an internal system. It is not visible online. You can request facilities online and pay the associated fees to reserve them for your use. But once you actually go in and request that facility, it comes through to us in a manner of which it has to be approved. And this just eliminates any double bookings, or us just thinking that we could use a facility for an event and maybe somebody didn't mark it off on the calendar. So it's a 2-step approval process. Well, it's a request and then an approval process. However, because our tennis courts were not sought after facilities that ever had to be scheduled, or there were no conflicts, they're not even existing facilities set up in our fee schedule, which is codified, nor are they set up in our facility management system. So it would definitely be something worth continuing a dialogue on. All of our other fields and pavilions, if you want to reserve exclusive use of those facilities, you pay a fee, and then you're presented with a park permit or a facility use permit. But again, as I said, we have facilities within our inventory of park amenities that never demanded that level of oversight because they weren't highly utilized.
to follow up with that, I have a few other questions. This is the schedule that they've proposed, whether it was something they agreed upon between the two groups or just pickleball, we're not sure. But how official is this? If they show up on Monday at 10 a.m. and the courts are full of tennis players, do they have any authority to say, hey, we're here to play pickleball? Or is it, see you later, you got to go? Because in my opinion, at least, it's almost like this group is functioning, and maybe I'm really far off and I would love this to continue as a conversation. It almost seems like they're a league of sorts, right? They're an organized group that comes out and wants to do this. And in that case, I think maybe it does make sense to turn this into something with a fee attached, so they do have the rights to come out and say, hey, this is our time, and maybe even find a way to post at those courts that schedule so that other people can plan their time around, kind of that existing schedule. So they don't show up at 10:05 to find the courts completely filled with pickleball players with no, previous knowledge that all of a sudden these formerly not so sought after courts are now, highly sought after, and they have some understanding of what those times will be. I think for general usage, if people are just going to go out and use the courts, then that's great, and have no expectation of having, any kind of reign over those specific times. But it seems, this is 7 days or 6 days a week now, 7 days a week, I guess, Monday through Friday. So that includes tennis, Tuesdays in the mornings. But it seems like, again, I guess that's a question with a whole lot of statements mixed in, but is there any kind of, with this schedule set, any kind of authority given to them to be able to go in and say, hey, this is our courts for this time? No.
So anytime, as I said, somebody wants to reserve space just for their group or function, they are going through a reservation system and they are paying for a permit for exclusive use. With that being said, I would remind the group that probably our conflict is not occurring with that 10 a.m. to 12 noon group, Monday through Friday. So I did mention to you that it seemed the peak use for the courts were evening hours. Not that we could then say, well, we're going to charge fees for peak times and non-peak times. We do employ some of that with pavilion rentals because we receive so many requests for donations of pavilion rentals for community events. We essentially said, okay, if you want to use a pavilion Monday through Friday, we'll reserve it for you free of charge because we don't have competing interest on those dates. And then we weren't denying paying renters for pavilion space because we had donated it to a community organization. So there are many ways that we can facilitate the discussion. But again, my recommendation at this point in time would be to see if the dust settles and they all work it out. Why fix what's not broken, I guess. So that's kind of where I'm at. And Councilman Dayhoff, if you could chime in on what it would take for us to actually have this added to the city's fee schedule, since it is a codified schedule. So if you have any insight on that, that might be of interest for everyone to understand that I don't think tomorrow we could just say, well, let's start charging $25 an hour, because I don't think we have the authority to do that.
Madam Chair.
Absolutely. Councilman Dayhoff, go for it.
As Abby well knows, it took us since 1994 to amend the last schedule. But I think we could take a look at it. But if it's okay with you, Madam Chair and Director Gruber, I think what I would suggest that in my experience, we let it play out a little bit. Because my experience is that these things settle out. I also would wonder if it's okay for me to suggest if the group would consider making a recommendation to council that we look forward to establishing more pickleball courts. There's a lot of excitement among the elected officials about pickleball, and there's a lot of excitement in the community about pickleball. I think the fiscal note on pickleball courts, and Ms. Gruber can help me with this. I think the fiscal note's different from a tennis court in that the price point's a little bit more accessible. I also believe that there are some grants opportunities coming up. And I've been doing this for a long time, and one of the best grants writers I've ever come across is Ms. Gruber. And I think we have some opportunities coming up. So maybe if this committee, which is really attracting a lot of attention, maybe if this advisory board were to make a recommendation that we look at establishing some additional pickleball courts, I think it would be well received. I can't make a motion, but if the chair would consider asking the board for that motion, that might be a kind of fun idea. I think there's a number of places we could put pickleball courts, and I think that would be exciting.
I had a follow-up question to that. So the motion would be to create or to explore the possibility of putting additional sole use pickleball courts at one of the other park facilities within the city. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. But I would look forward to Ms. Gruber's input, because I work for Ms. Gruber.
And I was going to ask a similar question, if it makes sense that they are solely for pickleball, or if it makes sense to add more that could be kind of dual use.
Yeah, either pickleball and basketball, or pickleball and tennis.
Mr. Wagman's opinion is important to me. And I know that Mr. Zaleski's right there. He gets to observe it firsthand. There's a lot, because I'm on Willis Street a lot. My family has a home there. It's a lot of excitement. It's a lot. So.
Well, and hopefully I didn't give off the impression that my intent was to say, let's make it a reservable space right now. It was more just that question, if it becomes, more of a league or more of a very organized group. But I absolutely agree with the idea that for now, let's see if they can just work it out. I think most of these times do seem to be kind of those lower use times, and hopefully, each group can get the time they need to do what they need to do and enjoy that space that we have in one of our really wonderful parks here in Westminster. So, but yes, I agree, Aaron. I know as you were kind of getting into it there, that recommendation, it would be great if somebody would like to make that recommendation to, or a motion to recommend to the Mayor and Common Council that we explore opportunities to add pickleball in other areas. Yes, Mr. Wagner.
Make a motion. Let's see if we can ask advice from Abby about other parks that have tennis or basketball, how we would go about adding pickleball to them. And I first want to think, name all the parks and what would be advantage to do 1 or 2 or 3. And again, part of me says the more we can have available to people, we could then also make a statement that all the parks are acceptable and have access to pickleball courts.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Ms. Gruber.
So we have opportunities to line existing tennis courts at King Park, as you've already mentioned. JC Park also has tennis courts that could be lined for pickleball. In addition, at JC Park, there is a basketball court that would have the opportunity to be lined for pickleball. However, that is not a fenced area. So that might create issues chasing down balls. The other item that is important to remind the advisory board of is that the current iteration of the Wakefield Valley Park Master Plan contemplates a complex of 6 dedicated pickleball courts. And albeit I understand the thought between making these courts multi-purpose in some way, shape, or form, because we know everything is a trend, right? So today's hot sport or event or thing is, tomorrow's news. So one of the great things about creating fenced court spaces, whether they're tennis courts, pickleball courts, or what have you, they're very adaptable to the next trend or the next phase that we see sort of coming down the road in the parks and recreation industry. So there are many things that can be played on a sports court, and they're highly adaptable, and usually the cost for those adaptations is fairly low.
Very good. Well, thank you. That's helpful to know, at least in my mind. And I agree. I think thinking about fenced in areas is very important. I can just imagine people, Jennifer laughed a little bit, but people chasing after all these balls. They're going to spend more time chasing the balls than they are going to be playing their pickleball games. So at this point, I don't know if it makes sense and we can continue this discussion, or we can go ahead and make a motion. If it makes sense to just generally recommend that we explore opportunities to expand pickleball in the city, instead of being so specific to say, adapting tennis courts or adapting basketball courts. But in general, I think, some of the costs associated with whether it's a new court or adapting existing courts and what that looks like, whether we have to add fences or add just lines or whatever, it might be worth exploring a little bit more to see where those possibilities lie. But does anybody have any thoughts on either direction, or would anybody like to make a specific motion?
I'm reluctant to make a motion just because of, first of all, the Wakefield discussion that Abby mentioned. It's already including the discussion of additional courts, multi-purpose courts that can be, as she put it, adapted to different trends. I'm a little opposed to the idea of having a single-use facility. A pickleball court is smaller than a tennis court and therefore cannot be adapted to tennis, whereas a tennis court or a basketball court may be more flexible. So I think if we were to make a motion to explore additional fenced sports courts for the city, we can do that. I just, it feels a little premature to me if we're going to have the Wakefield discussion at any point anyway. I'm not sure if we're talking about in addition to what's going into Wakefield, or expanding on what's in Wakefield, or if we're just going to talk about putting exactly what's already intended to go there. I just have a lot more questions, I think, at this stage.
And for the sake of only playing devil's advocate here, I think the other thing we need to consider is the timeline for Wakefield. So Ms. Gruber might be able to give us some more feedback on that, but I imagine, and I know we've talked about this a lot with the master planning process, that despite the fact that we might be putting together this beautiful image of lots of amenities, they're not all happening immediately. So I don't know where some of those courts lie in that plan. And I wonder, and maybe you can touch on this a little bit, Councilman Dayhoff, if his comment about kind of exploring these other opportunities might lie in just kind of, as Abby mentioned, those low cost, kind of easier opportunities to expand the potential for this sport in the city, and maybe less so kind of going all the way to a new construction pickleball court that's only for pickleball. But I could have misunderstood a couple of those comments, so feel free to respond to that. But Abby, if you have any ideas, like I said, with that master planning process and kind of timeline for things.
We are actually working through all of the phasing right now. It's in the hands of the consultants to sort of suggest the rough order of magnitude. It also obviously then depends upon availability of funding. So if, for instance, somebody said, well, there's this great grant opportunity for the development of pickleball play in Maryland, you should really apply for this grant. They could happen sooner than what we would predict or contemplate in the phased approach to the master plan for Wakefield. So I'd love to give you a more definitive answer on how that all unfolds, but it's really, it's quite up in the air at this point in time. So it would be probably, I think a good question to digest or a motion to put on the table would be to explore expanding opportunities for pickleball play within the existing infrastructure of the Westminster City parks system. Because as we've all discussed, there are other tennis courts that could potentially be lined, and that would expand opportunities for play. And, it could happen quite quickly. So.
Thank you, Ms. Gruber.
Madam Chair.
Was that you, Councilman Dayhoff?
I think Member Burrows brought up some great points. Maybe what we could do is come to a consensus that now that Abby is aware, now that Ms. Gruber is aware of our thoughts, maybe we could ask her to report at the next meeting as to where perhaps we could line some additional courts, because I think Mr. Burrows' comments were right on the money. Pickleball seems to be a big thing right now, but is it really sustainable? I don't know. But later on, they could be tennis courts or solely tennis courts, or they could be even basketball courts. I mean, they could be volleyball courts. I mean, whatever. I think I really liked Mr. Burrows' response. So maybe we could just simply ask Ms. Gruber for some recommendations, some thoughts at the next meeting, and she could gather her thoughts and see what she recommends and see how this plays out for another month. I don't see the pickleball fervor going away anytime soon. A lot of people are really excited about it. So yeah.
Thank you, Councilman Dayhoff.
Those are my
No,
thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a great idea to table it for now and continue to add it to our discussions in the future. With as quickly as this happened this last time, obviously, I think we know that it can happen very quickly again. So even if we may wait a month or two and explore it and digest it a little bit more, I think once again, it will, they're a very eager group. I think they will help us to make that happen if we do determine at some point that's a worthwhile recommendation to make. And I think it might also help to see again how the use of the facility that we just updated here at City Park, how that pans out and where that additional need might be. So if we are all in agreement, then we will table that for now and move on to Ms. Gruber's next update of our Tahoma Park Boulder, maybe not so much anymore, Boulder playground.
Yes, yeah, that was the other thing that we started to discuss internally is, oh my, do we have to rename it?
Yeah, I thought that. Yeah.
There are boulders all around it. So, I mean, it still kind of is, surrounded by boulders, but.
Yes, and that's a great point, Madam Chair. And I actually had brought that up when we were discussing it. I said, well, there still are boulders there. We just don't want people climbing on them. So on your screen, you should see the photograph that Ms. Laird shared with everyone in an email that was sent out prior to this evening's meeting. And this is the most current installation photo. I do believe it was taken today. Is that correct? I was also out and took some photos as well, but hers is way better than mine. And I'm not a good photographer, I'll be the first to admit. So this is the core of the unit that is going up. They are forecasting that they'll need at least 2 more weeks until construction of the equipment is complete. And as all of you have heard, there are supply chain issues everywhere. And although all of the pieces and parts to our play structure are on site and ready for installation, the one thing that might cause us an issue is the engineered wood fiber needed to be placed in the use zone around this particular piece of equipment. And certainly we cannot open it to the public until the appropriate fall protection is in place. And most of the playground installers and manufacturers have been having a very hard time getting this in. So it does look like we will be able to open the playground provided the engineered wood fiber comes in on time sometime in May. I would definitely at this juncture assume construction will continue through the end of April. One of the challenging factors at this site is that it stays very wet. So construction didn't even begin when we thought it would begin because the area was still very wet. The other questionable item that I couldn't really give you any insight as to an end date for construction was because this is an old quarry site, they just weren't exactly sure what they would be digging into to achieve the appropriate depth for the footers. So because this main structure that you see on your screen right now is up, that would have been the hardest part because those were the deepest footers that were required for this particular piece of equipment. And so now that that's up, we think 2 more weeks. So if we do want to contemplate any type of a ribbon cutting ceremony, we would firmly be into the month of May to recognize this new park space.
How serious is the conversation to rename the park?
Well, it just really popped in my head today when I was typing an email and I wrote Tahoma Farm Boulder Park. And I was like, wait, Tahoma Farm Park. So I eliminated the word Boulder. So I think that's probably a great discussion for this group as well.
Yeah, because I was thinking about if we're going to do a ribbon cutting, that might be, I don't know, might hold a little more gravitas if it had a new name to go with it, you know what I mean? So, but I mean, I think the progress is amazing, and yeah, I'm well aware of the supply chain issues that's going on. I think it's, but May sounds great. Ribbon cutting. What does everybody think about that?
I think we discussed it before, you know, it might be a very small event, you know, with as many of us from this group as can attend and maybe a few photos with, you know, notification to some media outlets just to let them know it's happening, but really more, you know, a photo opportunity for us to then be able to kind of push that out and spread the word and show that, hey, officially it has reopened for everybody who's, you know, driven by, walked by, biked by, and seen, you know, the signs up saying park is closed, just a reminder to those people. And then to anybody who just hadn't been there in a long time and didn't even know it was changing, to show that, hey, there's some really awesome things happening in the city, and you should come take advantage of this really cool new park. So the picture doesn't show it well, but that structure, and Abby, you might have the actual dimensions. It's probably 30 feet in the air or more. I mean, that thing's huge.
I have the dimensions in my head at one point in time, but I can't make any guarantees. But yes, it is very tall.
It's very cool. So even though they're not boulders that kids can climb on, this is going to be quite the climbing structure for, you know, families to be climbing on and around and all over. So I think it's very exciting. But yes, the name I think would be a great discussion if anybody else has any other thoughts on that. Aaron, I know you touched on the idea of changing the name, but do you have any thoughts on what that might look like?
Nothing in particular or specific. I was just trying to picture in my head what a ribbon cutting ceremony would look like for Tahoma Farm Boulder Park. There's no boulders to climb on, but the other thing, Abby, that you brought up was the drainage issues at that park, and I know that park has been traditionally very wet and muddy. You know, a day or so after it rains, it's still got a lot of puddles around, but was there any additional delays or mitigation efforts to improve that drainage at all that would have added to the cost or the construction timeline?
No, and actually the there is a drainage system there and it was just
Yes.
clogged. So one of the things was we just had to open that drain back up again. And because of the amount of wood fiber that we have to put down, because the fall zone is, well, because the structure is so high, the engineered wood fiber has to be much deeper for the structure than it does for some other playground structures. So when in fact you may have shown up, or you've had your children over there playing on the boulders, there was much less engineered wood fiber down at that point in time. So you probably did experience some standing water around the fake boulders that were in there. And when we had the pre-construction meeting, we discussed that likely would not be an issue because of the depth that we have to maintain for the engineered wood fiber for the structure. So we should be in good shape. Opening up the drain and adding the additional layers of fall protection will take care of those issues at that site.
I'm pro ribbon cutting ceremony. I think that would be a really cool idea.
Okay, I'll dig out the big gold scissors.
I was gonna say, if you don't have them, I might have some somewhere.
I have a bag. I have a bag of them too. And I believe I heard Ms. Yang said she was going to cook something for us also.
Look, it might be our first in-person encounter with this group, which would be fun.
That would be fun. I would look forward to that.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if it's okay with you.
Go ahead.
Ms.
Councilman.
Gruber, are there any bureaucratic complications if we change the name? Because I've been just calling it Tahoma Park.
Well, that's always a great question. And I was hoping you might have more insight into the history since you are the group's historian. So I am not aware, and I believe the sign that's out there that actually sits on the right-hand side of Tahoma as you're heading towards Uniontown Road, I think that doesn't even refer to it as Tahoma Farm Boulder Park. And I think that says Fenby Farm. It refers to the lime kiln and Fenby Farm. So
Yeah,
there's sort of an identity crisis in that area, if you ask me, because you have the Wakefield Valley Community Trail, which is now getting confused with the golf course. And you have Tahoma Farm Boulder Park, which a lot of people don't even know that it has a name. Avondale Run baseball field is right there. So
right.
there's all these competing names. So it would be a great discussion for this group, an ongoing discussion. Is it all renamed? Is it looked at as a complex instead of these little facets? I don't know that there are any historical ties to any of those names other than the areas that are surrounding. Obviously, there was a lime kiln there, and obviously Fenby Farm is the property that was part of the golf course, and the property that, of course, these park sites sit upon. So, there's history to the naming convention, but is anybody going to get upset? I don't know. It's a great discussion to have.
It might be interesting, like you said, to almost map out kind of the named spaces that are around that area and just get an idea for what exists. And it might also be nice, as Aaron mentioned, to have a new name. It's a new park. We don't want anybody to come out thinking it's still going to have boulders for kids to climb on, and then be really disappointed. So maybe the name change would insinuate in some way that they should expect a change if they don't know what the new plan is. And that way no one comes out and says, my kids loved rock climbing. Why isn't there a big giant boulder that's disintegrating sitting in the middle of the park anymore? So I think it's a great opportunity, but perhaps something we can all digest and come back to the next meeting with some ideas. And I can send out something prior to the meeting to remind everybody, and maybe we can send some things and have another discussion. surrounding this, since this is kind of a new idea being brought to everybody right now. So if that sounds good, then we can proceed in that way, unless somebody has another thought.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councilman Dayhoff.
Maybe the OCD historian in the group might do a little research in my files and see what I can come up with. 'Cause I'd be kind of partial to just referring to it as Tacoma Park, Tacoma Park. I'd be kind of partial just to call it Tacoma Park. And I think it'd be kind of fun. I don't think there's going to be much in the way of signage changes at all. I always thought it was colloquial that we referred to it as Boulder Park. So I'll see.
I was hoping you might nominate yourself to go dig around a little bit and see what you can find.
I'll be happy to. I've written about the area a good bit. Just as an aside, that's where the German POWs were kept during the war. It's just absolutely a fascinating area of town. I'll take a look at it, and I'll have a report for the next meeting that I'll send to you.
Thank you, Councilman Dayhoff.
Thank you.
All right, moving on then to 2021 events. Ms. Gruber.
Yes, so just to recap, obviously we had the Celtic Canter, and that was a sellout event, which I think staff would agree it was successful. We received a lot of good feedback that people felt safe. They were happy to participate in a live race again. I think a lot of runners have participated virtually in many races over the course of the past year, and we're excited to actually be in a live race atmosphere. And of course, again, we had beautiful weather smiling down upon us for the day. So the stars aligned, and it was a good day for the community. What's interesting is whenever you change the venue for an event, you get mixed reviews. We had many people say, oh my gosh, you should just have everything out here all of the time. And other people expressed that they missed being able to run down the middle of Main Street, because when else can you do that other than when we would close it for this particular event? So all in all, lots of good feedback and a great day for Westminster. And then to follow that, on March 27th, Wakefield Valley again hosted 600 plus people to our Bunny Trail. This is a brand new event for the department to put on. This was in lieu of the city's traditional egg hunt that is generally held in City Park. And it was our intent to provide a springtime themed activity for families that was safe and physically distanced. And if you've ever watched or participated in a children's egg hunt, that is impossible. So we had two trails that mirrored each other. One was on, if you're familiar at all with the site, one was on the yellow trail out at Wakefield Valley. The other was on the red trail. The activities were the same on both trails, but it allowed us to process larger amounts of people faster. We learned a lot from our Halloween event, so we were able to retool our approach, and the children embarked on an activity trail where there were people movers in between. So we spent a lot of time with Sidewalk Chuck creating activities to keep the children engaged as they moved between one station to another. And the stations that they stopped at were a mix between interactive games, and then sometimes they were just picking up a craft kit. And then at the very end, they had their own personalized egg hunt. So we hid, like, as they're coming down the trail, we were connected with radios, and we say, we have, a family of 3 children coming, and then we would hide enough eggs for them to hunt just within their family unit. We had stellar volunteers on that particular day. I want them all back for our next event because they were just so great to work with, and they were all young members of our community, and that's always heartwarming to see. So certainly another good day. Again, the weather could not have been more cooperative, and we are always grateful when that happens, because it makes everybody's day that much brighter. And coming very quickly down the pipeline is our wine stroll, which is next Saturday. This event, as you may remember, sold out in less than a day's time. And so we are working out all of the details. As I said, with the bunny trail, every event that we've done since the onset of COVID has been a brand new event for us. So it's not like we can take this strategic footprint that we've developed that worked and just hit the go button. So we really are starting from scratch, and we haven't really been putting events out there for a year. So there's a lot of, there are a lot of things that we're managing through to make sure that it is the best possible experience that we can put out there for the community. Everything is on track and moving well for the wine stroll at this point. We have also, we're very much into the midst of the planning process for our flower and jazz event. And we are also moving forward with plans for beer and barbecue stroll in June. One of the interesting things that occurred was in May, the group gathering limit that we had to adhere to for the plans that we currently have in place was lifted. So we were capped at 250 according to the governor's executive order that was lifted in March. And we had reached out to the health department to say, what does this mean for us? Can we just go ahead and increase our capacity? And the answer is no. We would have to resubmit new plans, and there's no magic number. It's up to the discretion and the comfort of the health department and the health officer. So if I said, well, let's increase it to 500 people, we can still keep tables 6 feet apart. It still has to go through an approval process. So we very quickly learned that finding out that the group gathering limit had been lifted in March didn't give us enough time to be reactionary to change anything for the wine stroll. We have evaluated what that will mean and what that will look like for Flower and Jazz Festival. And we are making some calculations right now and planning to submit a revised request to the health department to increase our capacity for that event. And additionally, we will see some effects of those lifted restrictions, hopefully for the beer and barbecue stroll as well. We did have a very brief meeting to strategize on, did we think we felt safe enough and could adapt these events back out to Main Street for beer and barbecue stroll? And it was still very much the consensus of staff that it is far better, safer, and more controlled to keep it in an environment that is not porous like Main Street. So as soon as we move it out to Main Street, we can't tell only ticket holders that they are allowed on Main Street. When we're closing off a parking lot or a park space for a particular event, then yes, we can say, oops, sorry, park's closed for public use today. You have to have a ticket to come in. It's even more palatable when you create an atmosphere in a space that's not sought after, like a parking lot. So probably look to see the beer and barbecue stroll not return yet to Main Street and still remain in the Longwell parking lot. And that is my 2021 events update, unless there are additional questions.
I just want to first really quickly, there might be some other questions, chime in and just thank you. I've heard from so many people who participated in any one of those events, you know, from Celtic Canter to the Bunny Trail. And they just talked about what a great kickoff it was to an event season and how they felt like it was really like opening day for Westminster events. And they were like, oh, they're back, you know? And so I think people realize that there are going to be some changes and they're going to see some differences in all the events, but they're really excited that they're happening again. So kudos to you and your team for, you know, making them, you know, even though they're different, I think people are, for the most part, really enjoying them. So thank you for everything you're doing to make that happen. I know it's not easy work, and you know, kind of reinventing each one of these events is taking a lot for your team to pull together and come up with some really innovative ideas to make it happen. So thank you so much from, you know, me, from the entire board here. I'm sure they all echo that sentiment, and then from so many residents who I've heard from who have just had a wonderful time. You did say something about volunteers, a couple things about volunteers, and I know in my experience, volunteers are what make the world go round. And we couldn't do what we do without them for so many different organizations. And so something for you to think about, and you don't have to give us an answer now, and for other people to comment on if you want to. A big part of my work throughout my career with volunteers has always been finding a way to make sure they know they're appreciated. So even if it's something as simple as a thank you note from members of this board, you know, whether we can divvy up a list of names and just send a quick handwritten note that says, you guys did awesome. We couldn't have done it without you. This is so great. Sometimes just a few words goes a long way. So if you want to think about, you know, kind of ways that we can be involved in that so that your staff doesn't necessarily have to do it, but maybe somebody from the outside, you know, can be sending those notes to them or finding some way to deliver some level of gratitude to those volunteers. I think, as you mentioned, it'd be great to have some of these awesome teammates come back. So making them feel good about what they did and letting them know how awesome their work really was and what an impact it made. You know, I know I would love to be a part of that if that's helpful. So feel free to let us know how we can help in that. And the only other question I had, Flower and Jazz, are we doing a run?
No.
Okay.
We don't have the capacity within our staff because we've established 3 separate festival areas that will all have to be staffed. There's nobody left to be out at Wakefield to do a run, and we would really like to, and we've had a lot of requests, and I just have a really hard time saying no, but I have to say no to that one this year.
I didn't think so, but I've had some questions, so I thought I'd go ahead and clear the air and get an answer, and that way people could stop asking, and maybe that would divert some questions that you're getting to. Well, thank you again. I think everything, you know, it's been such an awesome start, and hopefully it's, you know, the beginning of what will be, you know, a really great season for lots of events here in Westminster. So anybody else want to ask any questions or make any statements about Abby's report?
May I ask one, please? Oh, Steve.
Steven Zalewski, let's go for it.
Is there any way that we can incorporate the local businesses within the upcoming events past the Jazz Festival? That would be the June events. I know we're not down Main Street, but the whole purpose of our events is to get people into local businesses. Is there any way we can incorporate them within the Longwell or the parking lot?
Yes, so part of our COVID compliance plan and part of any event we ever have, whether it's on Main Street or in City Park or in a parking lot, our downtown business community is allowed to have a vendor space for free. Now, we had to eliminate that opportunity for the wine stroll because of the 250 group gathering limit. But for Flower and Jazz, we are absolutely, invitations have been emailed out to all of the local businesses, and they are more than welcome to come in to the footprint and promote. And if it's you know, if they have a storefront and they sell things, they can sell things as a vendor, and we do not charge our downtown businesses for that opportunity. The other thing that we're doing in conjunction with Flower and Jazz, because we definitely want to draw people to Main Street, even though we can't have the event there, is we are creating a downtown directory, and any downtown business that will be open during the hours that Flower and Jazz operates will be listed in the directory. We'll have it color coded, you know, restaurant, gift shop, however we break it down. We haven't really quite worked out the categories yet, but it'll be color coded according to what type of business they are. And then anyone that's open during the hours of Flower and Jazz, we have some extra money in the budget for this event because we didn't have to hire 3 stages worth of jazz entertainment. So we decided that we would purchase gift cards from each of the businesses that are participating. And then we're going to roll around to each business at the end of the festival day and do a Facebook Live drawing. So when you come into the festival footprint, which is the park and the 2 parking lots, you'll receive a downtown directory, and stapled to it will be a raffle ticket. And then it's up to you to go down and visit the downtown businesses and deposit that raffle ticket into the business raffle jar of your choice. So if you really love, let's think, O'Lordan's, for instance, you would you would go into a Lorden's and you would drop your raffle ticket in that jar. And then we're going to move around to all of the businesses and try to get some social media attention for them at the end of the festival day to draw the winners from each raffle for the gift cards that we've purchased from those businesses. Additionally, we have live music, live jazz music that we've booked for the Locust Lane stage. So those are the strategies that we've employed to try to still put our arms around our beautiful downtown business owners and make sure that people who are visiting the festival, albeit not on Main Street, still visit Main Street.
Great question. Is there any way to incorporate that directory into the plan for the wine festival or wine stroll?
With a week to go, at this point.
I didn't know if that was something that you guys had already done. I know you're talking about it for Flower and Jazz, but I didn't know if that was something you'd already done. Not that I want to add things now.
Yeah, we really were focusing on it for Flower and Jazz because it's not a ticketed event, and we were concerned, especially when the group gathering limit was still 250 people. What do we do with the queue of people that are waiting to get into each festival section? So it was something that we felt we could divert festival traffic downtown with this directory if in fact each festival section was too full because we were staying underneath that 250 group gathering limit. It's not an issue now, but it still is because our plans were written to that specification. So the wine stroll, we really feel like because it's 2 seating times, people aren't going to want to leave. And so they're just generally going to gravitate to the downtown area because they're going to want to keep, hanging out with the friends that they were at the wine stroll with and things like that. So we feel that maybe the inclination to end up downtown is a little more natural for the wine stroll than it would be for Flower and Jazz.
I like how you put that. Thank you. Anyone else with any questions or comments for Ms. Gruber on her report? Mr. Dayhoff, Councilman Dayhoff.
What's the name of the band? Is it the same band that you had last fall? They were awesome.
Yes, Go Go Gadget.
Oh, they were great.
Yes,
I'm looking forward to that. It's on the 24th.
correct.
I'm looking forward to that. Do you have some volunteer opportunities for that event? Can we help?
We always have volunteer opportunities. Yes, yes, absolutely. We would love to put any of you to work that would be willing. Just email me.
I
I'm
would
going
look
to
forward-
drink. I'm not working. I bought a table at 7:30 that morning and I'll be there at 10:59 ready to go.
I'm so jealous. I was waiting on friends to confirm when we should get our spot, and then it was all done by the
Oh,
time.
I didn't even confirm. Actually, I wrote a few days beforehand to my friends when they said it's opening up on whatever date. So I used that pre-notice window and I figured I'll just buy a table and I'll find for the people to come with us. If not,
I learned my lesson. That's
wine for 6 people, which is fine too. So whatever.
And I'm Ms. Yang's designated walker because I don't drink. So,
Yes, I will be walking that day.
okay. Ms. Laird and I, we'll join you at your table. It'll be
If you have
great.
extra spots, let us know. We'll help you fill them. Well, if there is no further statement and no further questions from anyone regarding Abby's report and no new business, then I suppose we'll move on to scheduling our next meeting. So if we look at a calendar,
Madam
Mind if we
Chair,
back up one bullet to the Durbin House?
oh yes, did I leave one off? Oh, Wakefield Valley and the Durbin House.
yeah,
Actually, 2.
yes.
Oh yes, I left. I completely. I've taken so many notes. I wrote over top of them. I apologize. See, that's why I have to ask and see if there's anything else. If I've missed anything. Go ahead, Abby.
I promise this update won't take long unless there are questions. So the Wakefield Valley Park Master Plan process, again, as I said, it is in the hands of the consulting firm Pannoni Associates. They are basically designing their final report, and the plan is to present to the mayor and council on May 10th. I believe that is the correct meeting date. Yes. So once all of that information is synthesized and it's reported out to the mayor and council, certainly it will be shared with the advisory board. And, it doesn't end the discussion about that process. So this is just very much dipping our toe in the water of the entire process. As far as the Durbin House is concerned, we had a fantastic day with Grove and Del Olio architects on site on March 25th. They spent over 8 hours in the Durbin House. There were 6 members of their team there. And we had a kickoff meeting in the morning. We all connected for a brown bag lunch on the front lawn of the Durbin House midday. And then I met up with them at the conclusion of their day to go over some of their findings. We found remnants of the location of the Spring House. We actually were able to understand exactly where the old dairy barn used to sit. There was an artifact found, an ox bit was found in one of the stream beds, dating back to the 1700s, which was significant. And so I am so incredibly excited to see the reporting that comes back in from this firm, because it was definitely an eye-opening day just to even understand how ancient that landscape is, where the former golf course sits, and how we will be able to translate that information to park visitors in the future was really very exciting to me as the day unfolded. So I can't wait to get that report and share all of the amazing information that was collected from that professional team out with everyone. That's it for that agenda item.
I just want to, I think I know the answer already, but Josh had sent an email about, I guess whoever the person is wants to do the golf course, talking to Josh, but I know Josh raised a few points in his message. So I just want to make sure that we acknowledge that Josh sent the message and choose to, thanks, but no thanks, whatever. So just make sure we acknowledge that he sent it and under consideration, and then we can move on from that. But I do want to speak on his behalf since he's not here today.
Absolutely. So Josh sent a message, Josh Ambrose, regarding Wakefield, and that there had been a member of the community who'd reached out talking about an alternate plan. And I think Councilman Dayhoff responded just to inform us all that it would require a lot. I dare say impossible to go down that road, but close. So we did discuss it kind of through an exchange of emails. And I think with that recommendation from Councilman Dayhoff at this time, it makes sense to perhaps not go too far down that road and just to continue on. So as long as everybody else read that message and agrees, I think I agree. We'll acknowledge that we received that information, but that at this time it probably isn't, at least in our purview here in this group, to consider that and move ahead in any way with that information. So yes, Councilman Dayhoff.
In 2018, just so the board is aware, in 2000, and Ms. Gruber can help me with this. In 2018, we signed an agreement with the National Park Service in return for funds, certain funds. We agreed to a land, water, and conservation grant that constricted the future use of the property. And as we interpret the guidelines and the structure that we agreed to with Land, Water, and Conservation with the National Park Service and the Department of Natural Resources. The proposed use by the gentleman is not consistent with the legal structure of the property at this point in time. Candidly, I thought his proposal was really exciting, and I hope that if he can't, since he can't put it at Wakefield Valley, I would hope that he would pursue it, you know, somewhere close to Westminster, because there's other opportunities near Westminster for you know, to acquire 187 acres and do something like that. But it would be nearly impossible for the legislative body to change the legal structure of that property to be consistent with this proposal. So I want to do everything I can to encourage proposals like that, but it's not a good fit. It won't work. It won't work at Wakefield Valley at this point in time. So that's the story behind that. Is that how you understand it, Ms. Gruber?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. I know you sent us a quick version from your hike.
I was hiking on the CNO. I was hiking on the CNO Canal, and I said, "Oh my word, this group needs to know." So I was, and Caroline did not guide me into over a bridge or into a creek or anything like that, or off the end of the ferry. There's a famous YouTube about someone who's texting and falls into a fountain. Caroline always grabs my arm and says, "The fountain is this way."
Well, thank you. I think that was very helpful, and it's good to have that history, especially as, you know, the possibility of other ideas might come our way, just to have a better understanding of kind of the direction we've taken and how that might be really cemented in at this point. So, and I think, you know, from what we've heard from the community as well, I think that idea of conservation has been really well received. So it's exciting to move in that direction.
I think the plan we've come up with is just dynamite. I think it's perfect. And I see it as a legacy issue, and I think generations down the road are really going to be appreciative of the vision and the foresight of what it is that we're doing out there. I'm extremely excited.
I agree. The opportunity to have that kind of resource right here in the city is pretty unique and incredible. So
Can you imagine?
we look forward to seeing that continue as we go forward. So the recreation and parks, any other questions regarding Durbin House or Wakefield? No, it doesn't look like it. So we'll let Abby finish up with her strategic planning session information.
Well, and actually, I figured you might be getting sick of hearing from me. So I asked Ms. Yang if she would take over this portion of the meeting. Thanks to her incredible donation of services, my staff had the opportunity to endeavor into a strategic planning process, an exercise of which I believe, Ms. Yang, you can correct me if I'm wrong, none of them had participated in ever before. I was the only one that had ever been through a facilitated process like that. And the participation on Friday afternoon was incredible. I was very proud of all of them for the amount of effort that they put into the session when we were in person. And the post feedback that I received from staff, I just sent out an email at the conclusion of Friday, and I thanked everybody for attending and for being so responsive during the session. And I just asked a very casual question: would you be interested in future opportunities, future facilitated opportunities? And overwhelmingly, the response was positive. And they certainly felt like this is time worth spent, which means a lot coming from my staff, because that is the one thing that we don't have a ton of, is extra time. So with that introduction, I am going to attempt to share my screen one more time and turn it over to Ms. Yang for a deeper dive into her professional evaluation of the day. So let's see if I can do this. Okay.
Can you
there?
put on, it's presentation mode?
Okay, you went on
Yeah.
slideshow, I think
Yeah.
is what I need to do here. Okay.
There. Oh, you gotta show your other screen. Do you have two monitors going?
No,
You don't?
no,
Huh.
I do not. What do you guys see right now?
Well, I see the presentation mode because it means there's two monitors, two screens going on.
Oh, I do. Oh my goodness. I have my laptop docked to my, okay. Did I do it now? Is
No, you gotta share your other screen. There you go. Yes, there you go. We still want to see you though. Okay.
That's okay.
All right. I'll cue you through the slides. So,
Okay.
so yes, as you guys know, I kind of volunteered to kind of walk Abby and her staff through a very light, abridged version of strategic planning. There's only like 6-7 people there, and they've never done this before, so we did not want to over-engineer the process. What we'll go over today is a very high-level overview of the results from the meeting. The deeper stuff, there's still a lot more to do. And normally I spend a whole day to 2 or 3 whole days with a group to do this. We had 3 hours, 3.5 hours. So it's definitely a lot more to tackle, but it was a great day, great session. Really excited about how they participated. So next slide, please. All right. So overall, this is a high level overview of the process that we are taking. We gather initial input because we wanted to keep the meeting just half a day. We couldn't do a lot of the traditional brainstorming you would do in breakout groups. Plus with, 6-7 people, it's not very many breakout groups you can have. So we actually did a survey ahead of time. So we kind of did a survey with the staff, and these are full-time staff. One person actually was not full-time, but these are folks who are more involved with the operations of the department. We survey them, ask them some questions around their idea of, similar to the survey you guys answered, their ideas of aspirational goals and purpose and mission. What are you not? Those type of things. So I took that input. I also asked questions around their impressions of their work, expectations, and all that stuff, and analyze the results and design this workshop. And while I've done this many, many times, the workshop design itself and the flow is kind of tailored for the organization, depending upon the personalities and the content and what they want to achieve. So I spent a bit of time designing it, creating like a 24-page slide deck. And then we get together for our session. We defined the vision and mission. So we conducted a half-day session. I used all the input from the survey, crafted summary slides about it, and try to draw some patterns on it and all that good stuff. And we did refine the vision and mission statements. Actually, we created a vision statement and refined a mission statement. I walked in with a draft and let the group decide for themselves kind of how they want to tweak it. We also aligned on goals. We studied the results from the survey, discussed the department's core purpose, and gained consensus on some strategic goals. We also started to dive into the department itself, how to improve the department. We did a SWOT analysis, current state analysis, discussed some internal, external factors, and then initiatives. We did a little bit of this. We brainstormed a list of initiatives that the department tackles, which is a lot of stuff, and discussed how to prioritize them. We did not develop a roadmap yet because we're not there yet. And the bottom part are some next steps that I recommended to the group they need to tackle to actually finish a strategic plan and a roadmap exercise to make all this stuff actionable and worthwhile. So the next set of things would be really dig into the initiatives, profiling them and analyzing them and creating some measurable goals and action plan. One thing I kind of gathered from this group is that they want to please a lot of people and they want the community to be happy, but the trade-off is I think they actually take on a little too much. And so prioritizing is hard and they don't want to drop anything. They don't want to let anybody down. But I think what the first exercise would be is for them to actually lay everything out and actually define everything and just kind of see, what the landscape of things. And as new things pop up, make some decisions against that and have a little more data points to help them out with that. So that's kind of the process that we're taking and things we should do next. Next slide, Abby. So this is like the raw output. Normally for a one-page roadmap, you'll see a nice pretty diagram, infographic kind of thing. We're not quite there yet. So this is just the initial rendition of kind of the outputs. Next, click. So this is the vision statement that the group decided on. Create a premier community that is enriched by idyllic green spaces, state-of-the-art facilities, and world-renowned events. The vision is that audacious goal, is that aspirational utopia kind of state that they want to achieve. So they want to basically have this amazing kick-ass community. We want to use the word kick-ass, but we thought that wouldn't be as appropriate. So, but a kick-ass community, basically, of all this wonderful stuff around it. Next. Mission. So the mission is about the purpose. Be a champion of an innovative leader in creating and providing safe, fun, and healthy recreational experiences to engage, enhance, and energize our community. And that's what they feel their mission is around the purpose. And with this purpose, that's what they will do to help it kind of reach that vision statement. We talked a lot about what you are and what you're not. And we had to kind of pull away from a lot of the discussion was, oh, we want to bring more visitors, we want to bring more visitors. And I kept asking the group the question, are you really trying to bring more visitors? What's the core of the department's purpose? And eventually the group realized what the core is. It's about the community here. Visitors coming in might be a byproduct, a side benefit, but they all agree they are not a tourism department. They are not an economic development department. They are not a Main Street development department, even though there are benefits and kind of positive byproducts of their work that enhances that, but that's not their core mission or purpose. Next. So what they deliver events and experiences, and they manage green spaces, and they promote health and wellness. That's what the identity of Parks and Rec. In the mission statement, we said healthy recreational experiences, and that is a kind of recreational experiences. That's a catch-all for event, an experience, a well-groomed park, whatever it is, right? You go and you experience something, whether it be at an event, at a place, or whatever else. So that's why we picked that term. So deliver events and experiences, manage green spaces, promote health and wellness, and engage the community to kind of tie it all together. This is what they are. This is their identity. Next. And with this identity, there are some high-level strategic goals, which we need to dive deeper to create measurable goals. But for now, these are their strategic goals or their strategies they want to adopt in order to achieve the mission. Increase community awareness, optimize the use of green spaces, enrich the diversity and enjoyment of their events, enhance health and wellness programs, and improve operational efficiencies and effectiveness. So also within their own shop, kind of find some ways to be more efficient since they don't have a lot of time and resources. Next. So initiatives and action plans are the next thing on the docket for them to kind of flesh out. I think it's on their heads. They just need to put it down on paper and put everything side by side so they can actually kind of see the full landscape of what they do. And this can also help them better ask for more volunteers or for more resources or whatever it might be to help them achieve all that they want to achieve. And next, in order to kind of after that is to have those measurable goals and performance measures, and that they can actually track their progress and use some data to show all the wonderful things they're doing and have some of this data points that they can use to kind of communicate up and out and everything. So it's a way for them to kind of manage their own progress as well as kind of communicate to their stakeholders, look how wonderful we are, look how great we are, so forth and so forth. So this is kind of a summary of the what we kind of worked on for 3.5 hours. Next slide. And just a heads up, these are kind of the initiatives that we kind of start to document. We need a deeper dive on all of these, but this is kind of the initial list that we came up with. The numbers next to it indicated we had a vote in the survey about which initiative you think is the most critical, most important. And so that's what's kind of the voting around that. But some of these initiatives touch upon different areas of that Venn diagram as expected. And this will get blown out into a bigger initiative profile list, action plan, because I feel like Abby's team will always say yes. And we need to make sure that that doesn't always happen because they have so much on their plate already. They will never say no. And so I think one thing we can do as advisory board is help help meter that a little bit. But the only way for us to help them do that is understand what's really on their plate and how much effort everything takes and to make some of those decisions and not pile more onto them or anything. So that is kind of what we have in a nutshell. Any questions? All right, Abby, you can come back on camera now.
Okay.
First, I just want to say, I think this was obviously an awesome effort in 3.5 hours. If that's really all it was, you guys accomplished a ton. I've been through some of these exercises before, and this is a lot to accomplish and some really cool stuff that came out of it. So thank you to you, Jennifer. I think it's just been awesome for you to be able to volunteer your time and provide these services to the department. Hopefully Abby and her team got a lot out of it. I think if nothing else, it was a well-timed effort and exercise with this group just coming into play here in the city too. I think there's so many opportunities for us to support the team in a lot of these goals and endeavors, I think, as they start to really figure out what they all mean, you know, and how it's really going to come to fruition. And I think you made a point that I think a lot of us realized at our very first meeting when Abby first reported on what a year looks like for her team with the number of people that she has on her team. And that's just the idea of prioritizing and finding a way to say no sometimes, but still
It'd be
feeling
hard
like
for
they're
them.
really serving the community in an amazing way, even if they say no sometimes. So hopefully that's something we can also help your team with, Abby, as you guys continue through this effort to advocate for you and your team too, not just for the city and what we need as a community. So.
And as we flesh out the initiatives more, I'm pushing them to do a deeper dive on them, those on their heads, because that way we can also see where they need help. As we started to uncover some of the pain points that they're going through, and we still need to figure out a little bit more of that stuff before we can kind of, talk more about it. We still got to do more fact finding. But as we dig into what other pain points, there could be opportunities for us to help out in those pain points for them, whether it be, whether advocacy or resources or just talking to the right people or whatever it might be. So I think that's why I'm encouraging them to kind of put everything down on paper and lay everything out and plan out everything so that we also can know where we can step in and help and make some of those trade-off, help them make that trade-off decisions and be their sounding board and everything. The facilitating session took 3.5 hours, but all the prep that went before that took a lot more than 3.5 hours. Like I said, we tried to do that up front so that they didn't have to spend a whole day in a room together. So we kind of did a lot of that asking and massaging and looking and analyzing and shifting. And it's amazing how long it takes to craft 10 words, right? So I went through like 20 iterations of each of those statements and spent hours on them to give them a straw man of something. And we still spent another hour tweaking one. We debated about premier and quintessential for like 20 minutes about which word was better. And we were looking in the dictionary, what it actually means and all that kind of stuff. But the group was very engaged. I was very happy to see for people who've never done this before. They felt like this, they didn't think it was a waste of their time. I think they were very engaged, had some great ideas. But I think we haven't dug into internal operation efficiencies too. There's probably some things we could do to help you guys save some time in how you do your work. But that's just tip of the iceberg. A lot more to be done. But that's where we are with that effort. So it was fun.
Well, I know I look forward to continuing to follow this process. And even if it were to end here, I think so much has already been done. It's awesome. Not what I expected, but even more. I knew there was gonna be great stuff, but it was even better than I could have imagined. So kudos to all of you for your work. And yes, I completely understand that on your end, Jennifer, like on the back end, there was a lot more than that 3.5 hours. So thank you again for your willingness to provide that for the city and for this department. I think it's just really great for them to be able to kind of see it all and see that bigger picture and take a step back for a moment and then really jump right back into the little details of all of it. Always an awesome exercise for any group. So,
well, you should have seen me there. You got to talk about pickleball and adding more stuff on Abby's plate. I emailed her, I'm like, you're adding more to your plate. You're not supposed to say yes right now to anything else, no matter how easy it is. Like, this is how it happens. They say yes, yes, yes.
That's why we're going to hope that they just figure it out on their own and they can figure out when to use the courts and just move on. And Abby can just look at them out her window and say, oh, look, everyone's happy.
Yes.
Trust. We'll see. We'll hope and pray. Well, awesome. Thank you again. Does anybody else have any questions? Kevin Wagman, yes. No, nothing. Oh, he's crossing his fingers as well, so that all of it just works out. Any other questions or comments or anything from that awesome report? I know we're going long on this. I apologize to everyone, but I think it was all awesome information to share. Kevin Dayhoff, Councilman Dayhoff, I think you just said something, but we're on mute, so we missed it, but perhaps that was intended.
It's a great meeting. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yep. No, it's been fun to have these meetings and hear what kind of just organically comes out of these conversations. So
I'm gonna email those slides in a PDF to everybody, by the way, so you guys will get that.
that's
But-
great. I was trying to screenshot some of them because I thought
Oh,
they
no,
were
no, yeah,
so
sorry.
cool.
It'll be the PDF file. You guys will get that. I'll send it right after this meeting's over.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. All right. With that said, I think that concludes Abby's report this time for real, unless you have anything else you want to add that maybe we forgot about as we were preparing the agenda.
One quick thing about Wakefield, we actually will have the parking lot repaved
Oh, yes.
as soon as the city's roadway paving contract concludes. And I think they are a couple weeks off schedule because of rain. So as soon as CJ Miller is done there, they will be moving over to Wakefield, and we will have a lovely new parking lot to greet people as they come into the facility.
Very exciting. Yes, I heard about that and was thrilled that was able to be bundled into the bigger project. So yay for one more step forward in that project. All right, so that being said, we'll get back to scheduling the meeting. I apologize again. I have so many notes from all the exciting stuff that's happening that all of the paper in front of me is covered in writing. So the next meeting, if we stick with our second Tuesday of the month, that would be May 11th. I know that's right around Mother's Day. So Abby, if that's way crazy for you and you need to take a deep breath, tell us.
Our crazy will be
That's her
over by
life.
that point, so it's all good. Yep.
You'll have had one day to take a breath, right?
Right, exactly.
All right, well then for now, we will stick with the 11th of May, if that sounds good, and stick with 6 o'clock. Awesome conversation and discussion. I think this is really great. And I think there are so many things that we're moving toward with this group that are going to be really exciting. So thank you. And Abby, we will connect on a couple of those other issues as well as we move forward, just to and touch base with everybody before the next meeting to get ideas. I know there were a couple things throughout the meeting today that we talked about potentially, putting back on the agenda for next month. So we'll make sure everyone has a time to think about those again and bring thoughts to the next meeting so that we're prepared for that, for those discussions. So, so if that's all and there is no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for your time. See you in May.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.